Did you know that Sylvester Stallone wrote the entire screenplay for Rocky in just 3.5 days, after watching a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner that inspired him? Stallone was so fired up by the underdog spirit that he poured all his hopes, frustrations, and dreams into creating what would become one of the most iconic sports films in history. Yet at the time, nobody, including Stallone himself, could have guessed that this humble, low-budget movie would break box office records and change the landscape of American cinema. Now, let's explore the remarkable story behind Rocky, from Stallone's unwavering determination to the smallest details that gave the film its gritty charm. 1. Stallone was broke when he wrote Rocky. Sylvester Stallone was practically broke when he wrote Rocky. Legend has it that he had only $106 in his bank account, barely able to keep the lights on. Desperate for a breakthrough, he spent days typing the script on a second-hand typewriter, fueled by a personal obsession with proving himself. The script's urgency is no coincidence. Stallone felt that if he didn't make it happen, he might end up on the streets. But despite near starvation, he refused every offer from producers who wanted someone else to play Rocky, a stance many thought was suicidal given his finances. 2. He turned down $350,000 to keep the lead role. Stallone famously turned down offers as high as $350,000 for the screenplay, money that would have instantly erased his money problems because studios wanted a star like Ryan O'Neal or Burt Reynolds as Rocky Balboa. Stallone said no. He believed only he could infuse the role with the authenticity required. The studios thought he was insane. "You're broke. How can you walk away from this?" But Stallone was unwavering. It's rare to see that level of creative ownership from a newcomer. In hindsight, it seems like an act of destiny. 3. United Artists gave a tiny budget for the film. United Artists, initially uninterested in casting Stallone, finally relented under producer Irwin Winkler and Robert Chartoff's persuasion. But they gave a minuscule budget of about $1 million, a pittance for a major release, even in 1976. The production squeaked by, reusing sets and making do with minimal frills. This forced them to shoot on actual Philadelphia streets, capturing the city's raw feel. In a bizarre twist, that shoestring approach became a defining aesthetic, gritty, real, and in your face, mirroring Rocky Balboa's underdog spirit. 4. Locals, not actors, filled Philly's streets. Many of the people crowding Philly's sidewalks in the movie weren't trained actors, but real locals. The film's team scoured neighborhoods for authentic faces, from street vendors to random passers-by who didn't fully grasp they'd be in a movie. You can see the difference. These aren't glamorous extras, but everyday folks going about their lives. Stallone loved that authenticity. When Rocky jogs through the market, it's not staged background noise. These are real butchers and fishmongers. The hustle, the spontaneity, all lent Rocky a documentary-like immediacy. 5. The museum steps run was shot guerrilla style. The famous run up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art was shot guerrilla style. Stallone wore worn-out Converse sneakers, and the camera crew followed him in a van. The decision to film it this way was partly due to budget. They couldn't lock down permits for an elaborate shoot. So they did it on the fly, capturing the unfiltered joy on Stallone's face when he thrust his arms overhead. That joyous moment became Rocky's signature image, the underdog at the top, literally and symbolically. 6. Stallone's dog Butkus was part of the story. The lovable dog, Butkus, actually belonged to Stallone. Before Rocky, Stallone was so broke he sold Butkus to get money for food. After the script deal came through, he tracked down the new owner and bought his dog back for a much higher price than he'd sold him for. Rocky fans see the dog as a charming sidekick. To Stallone, Butkus symbolized the sacrifices he'd made and the redemption that came with success. It's a real underdog story within an underdog story. 7. Real meat, real punches, Rocky's training scenes. When Rocky practices his punches on hanging meat in a chili packing plant, that wasn't Hollywood artifice. They used genuine sides of beef, letting Stallone literally pound away at real flesh. He hammered so hard that he ended up with battered, bloody knuckles. Method acting or simply budget constraints? Possibly both. But the result was a grim authenticity, showing Rocky's refusal to compromise, even training in a grimy environment with improvised equipment. 8. Rocky's apartment was a real grimy building. The cramped apartment where Rocky lives wasn't a set. The crew found an actual rundown building and filmed inside. Stallone argued that a studio-built imitation wouldn't capture the bleak claustrophobia of a struggling boxer's life. There's a reason you can practically smell the musty walls. That real location gave each scene a raw intimacy, with no illusions or Hollywood polish to distract from Rocky's tough circumstances. 9. Talia Shire's shyness helped shape Adrian. Talia Shire's performance as Adrian has a fragile warmth that's essential to the film's emotional core. Interestingly, she and Stallone were both quite reserved off-camera. Shire once mentioned that she felt genuinely shy around the bombastic energy on set, especially with guys like Burt Young, Paulie. That timidness bled naturally into Adrian's character, intensifying her transformation from a painfully introverted pet store clerk to a supportive partner who helps Rocky discover his worth. 10. Burgess Meredith brought depth to Mickey. Burgess Meredith, cast as the grizzled trainer Mickey, was already a veteran of stage and screen. He brought a fatherly gravitas to the role, but with an undercurrent of desperation, mirroring Mickey's own regrets about never having his own big break. Off-camera, Meredith treated Stallone kindly, offering him acting pointers and moral support. This paternal vibe bled into their scenes together, the old trainer and the young hopeful forging a bond that resonates beyond typical sports movie tropes. 11. Carl Weathers got the role by trash-talking Stallone. Carl Weathers snagged the role of Apollo Creed by exuding supreme confidence at his audition. He read lines with Stallone, not realizing that Stallone wrote the script. At one point, Weathers criticized Stallone's sparring technique, suggesting he needed a better partner. That cocky attitude impressed the producers, who realized Weathers perfectly embodied the brash, charismatic champion. In later interviews, Weathers admitted he toned down his personal bravado to play Apollo, but the synergy between him and Stallone propelled the film's comedic and dramatic tension. 12. The final fight was shot in a tiny arena. The final fight between Rocky and Apollo was shot mostly in a tiny arena. A few hundred extras stood in for a massive crowd, while strategic camera angles and lighting transformed a cramped space into a roaring stadium. Stallone meticulously choreographed each punch, step, and collapse, describing it as a dance. The result is a bruising, bloody battle that looks heartbreakingly real, even though every move was carefully planned. Stallone insisted on a certain level of contact. At times, the punches landed harder than intended, leaving both fighters sporting real bruises. 13. Some punches in the fight were painfully real. Stallone's desire for realism went so far that in some shots the actors connected with real punches. Carl Weathers took a few hits. Stallone took some as well. The risk of injury loomed over every day of filming the fight. Weathers ended up with a cracked rib at one point, stifling yelps of pain to finish the take. They both believed the authenticity would translate to screen, forging a final sequence that hammered home the agony of boxing's physical toll. 14. Gonna Fly Now was composed in one day. Bill Conti's Gonna Fly Now theme was composed in a single day. Stallone approached him saying the film needed a triumphant anthem for the training montage. Conti watched some raw footage of Rocky sprinting through Philadelphia, then hammered out the uplifting horns and choral melody. The synergy was instant. The minute producers heard that soaring trumpet line, they knew they had an anthem for underdogs everywhere. Today, Gonna Fly Now is so iconic that you only need a few notes to conjure images of triumph, sweat, and unstoppable ambition. 15. The original ending was darker and lonelier. The script originally had a bleaker ending. Rocky would lose more definitively, and his relationship with Adrian wouldn't enjoy that sweet final note. Stallone always thought the ultimate victory was in going the distance, not winning the belt, but producers felt audiences needed a glimmer of hope. Thus, they compromised with a moral victory. Rocky loses by decision, but captures hearts. That final shot of him shouting for Adrian and ignoring the media frenzy sealed the film's emotional resonance, capturing love over victory as the real prize. 16. Director Avildsen encouraged improvisation. Director John G. Avildsen had a knack for heartfelt stories. He later did The Karate Kid. Here, he used a raw, on-the-fly style that sometimes meant spontaneously rewriting dialogue or letting actors improvise. Scenes like Rocky's awkward jokes or spontaneous bursts of kindness came from Avildsen, encouraging the cast to trust their instincts. This improvised approach gave the film a living, breathing energy. Every conversation feels organic, not stilted by big Hollywood lines. 17. Stallone suffered real injuries making the film. Stallone often jokes that Rocky inflicted more real injuries on him than any other film. Between real punches, running in the cold, repeatedly filming exhausting training scenes, he was constantly battered and bruised. At night, he'd ice his swollen knees, mentally replay the next day's stunts. Yet he thrived on that physical challenge, calling it the best pain of his life, because each twinge reminded him he was building something special. 18. The entire movie was shot in just 28 days. Remarkably, the film was shot in just 28 days. The crew blitzed through sequences to stay under budget. This breakneck pace matched Rocky's underdog theme, racing against time, finances, and naysayers. Stallone recounted entire days where they'd shoot multiple scenes in different Philly neighborhoods without official permits, relying on the city's goodwill. This rushed approach ironically captures the scrappy essence of a determined boxer hustling to make ends meet. 19. Joe Frazier's cameo added real boxing clout. A cameo that thrilled Stallone was boxing legend Joe Frazier. Frazier, a Philly icon, appears briefly in the film, lending further authenticity to the city's boxing culture. Stallone grew up idolizing Frazier, so having the champion share screen time was a surreal pinch-me moment. The cameo is quick, but it signals how Rocky transcended being just a fictional story, integrating real boxing aura. 20. The sidewalk scenes were real Philly interactions. When you see the sidewalk talk between Rocky and a local loan shark, it's not on a studio backlot. That is a genuine Philly street with real passers-by occasionally wandering into the shot. Because the film's budget was so tight, they couldn't lock down entire blocks. Instead, they shot in half-docu style, capturing raw city life. Stallone improvised lines when random folks approached, weaving them into the moment. Such spontaneity gave the movie a sense of being discovered, not manufactured. 21. Critics had mixed reactions, but audiences loved it. Early reaction from critics varied. Some saw Rocky as a standard sports underdog flick, ignoring the deeper emotional undercurrents. Others recognized how it captured the universal longing for self-worth, a man forging identity with his fists but truly winning with his heart. Audiences, on the other hand, fell in love with its sincerity. Word of mouth was electric. They resonated with the idea that you don't have to triumph over the world, you just have to go the distance in your own life. Soon, the lines at theaters grew. 22. Some felt the film glorified boxing's brutality. Some watchers criticized the film for glorifying boxing's brutality. Rocky indeed portrays savage ring violence, but many fans argue the story is less about violence and more about perseverance. The ring is merely the crucible for personal transformation. By the end, the narrative weighs emotional connection over the brutality. This push-pull between cynics calling it exploitative and believers calling it inspirational gave the film an edgy conversation around sports ethics. 23. The tagline made the film relatable to dreamers. The marketing zeroed in on the tagline, "His whole life was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot." That simple line resonated with dreamers everywhere. People who'd never thrown a punch in their lives saw themselves in Rocky's underdog journey. The poster of Stallone and Talia Shire, hand in hand, sold it as a Cinderella story for the working class. The synergy between romance and sports overcame typical demographic barriers, attracting couples, teenagers, sports buffs, everyone. 24. Rocky shocked the Oscars and won Best Picture. At the 1977 Oscars, Rocky went in as a lovable long shot. It ended up winning 3 awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Avildsen. People roared when it beat out heavy hitters like Network and All the President's Men. Stallone, nominated for both acting and writing, nearly broke down with gratitude. He said it was as if Rocky himself had found victory in real life. The night's big surprise sealed the film's underdog status in the pantheon of classic cinema. 25. The film saved United Artists financially. Rocky basically rescued United Artists from financial woes, giving the studio a massive hit. The surprise smash success confirmed that you don't need lavish budgets or big names. If the story's heart beats strong, audiences show up. Ever since, Rocky stands as a textbook example of small budgets done right, the intangible magic of sincerity over spectacle. 26. Talia Shire personally connected with Adrian's arc. Talia Shire saw in Adrian a reflection of her own insecurities. Shire says playing a woman discovering her voice was profoundly personal. Observing how Adrian transforms from timid store clerk to Rocky's emotional anchor taught Shire that quiet strength can be the mightiest force. Her journey mirrored the entire film, a blossoming from gloom to hope, from shy stares to confident gazes. 27. Chuck Wepner's lawsuit over Rocky's origin. Controversy surfaced about how closely the script mirrored Chuck Wepner's real 1975 bout with Muhammad Ali, where Wepner, an underdog, shocked the world by almost going the distance. Wepner eventually sued Stallone, claiming elements of Rocky mirrored his life story without proper credit. Years later, they settled. Stallone insists he drew inspiration from numerous fighters, not just Wepner, but the parallels remain a point of debate among boxing fans. 28. The Philadelphia Steps became iconic tourist site. The Philadelphia Museum of Art Steps gained instant fame as the Rocky Steps. Tourists still replicate that run daily, snapping selfies with raised arms at the top. Locals sometimes find it cheesy, but it's become a cherished tradition. People from across the globe come to feel that underdog triumph. The city even erected a statue of Rocky at the base, a testament to how a fictional character can become a city's real-life mascot of determination. 29. Sequels and Creed extended Rocky's legacy. Rocky later spawned multiple sequels, each exploring new chapters of Balboa's life, from fame and fortune to heartbreak and redemption. Then the spin-off Creed revitalized the saga for a new era. Audiences keep coming back because the central theme, fighting for dignity and self-respect, never gets old. Stallone jokes that while people might tire of big superhero blowouts, they'll always root for a man lacing up gloves to prove he's not a nobody. Ultimately, Rocky teaches us that victory isn't just about winning. It's about stepping into the ring at all, refusing to let self-doubt knock you out before you start. It's about having the courage to say, I can go the distance, even if I'm the only one who believes it. And that message still resonates, decades later. Because in the ring of life, we're all contenders. And sometimes the greatest triumph is simply standing tall at the final bell, heart pounding, knowing we gave it everything we had.